Merry Christmas. The manufactured media scandal that is the war on Christmas is an anti-Semitic psyop, and anti-Semitism is core to fascist ideology. Hi, welcome to my channel. Truth is, most people around the world do not celebrate Christmas, and that is good and normal, and if you're worried about that fact, you just might be a colonizer. And even those who do celebrate Christmas don't do it in the same way. As I'm sure every Australian watching this must know how weird it is to sit down and cozy up to see the Arctic snowscapes of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer while trying not to die of a summer heat stroke. Now, there's definitely a canon of Christmas movies that varies from household to household, or My Family Does Muppet Christmas Carol, like clockwork, and from country to country. It's a Wonderful Life is a classic, but pretty much just in the US, while outside of the UK, not many people watch the absolute masterpiece that is The Snowman. The Walking in the Air one, not the Mr. Police, I Gave You All the Clues one. I gave you all the clues. You could have saved her, Mr. Paul. I'm cutting off her head, your name is Harry Hole. Just as no one outside of Sweden knows much about Sagan, Carl, Burton's, Hergens, Jorgen, Burson, Dorgan, Bork. My last name is Calgary, I can get away with that. But on this channel, I'm not a big fan of canon. Canon is a construct that serves to subtly exclude everything outside of it and homogenize the concepts held within it. And the truth is that not everyone has a canonical Christmas. Human nature is varied and diverse, and not everyone can relate to the 1950s baby boomer Midwestern idol in, say, 1983's A Christmas Story. Not everyone was an American white kid born in the 1940s. Around here, we always historicize. Yes, the canonical Christmas classics are sweet and treacly, but we've watched them enough times and generally forgotten the social-political context in which they were made.
Well, young lady, and what's your name?
I'm sorry, she doesn't speak English. She's Dutch. She's been living in an orphan's home in Rotterdam ever since.
Rotterdam was heavily bombed by the Nazis when they invaded and forced the Dutch government to capitulate. This kid is a refugee, which actually makes the scene much more powerful when you put it back into context. And so, in the spirit of expanding the canon, here's a list of films set during Christmas celebrations that represent a fuller range of human experience than the ones you've watched on repeat since childhood. No, Die Hard is not one of them. Die Hard is part of the canon.
Got invited to the Christmas party by mistake. Who knew?
So it's the Christmas season, and your family is staging a Christmas pageant at the theater that they own. And it's beautiful. Your dad gives a whole speech about the power of theater to create a beautiful little world because the big world outside sucks so much. There's a huge Christmas feast. There's the Swedish version of a conga line. It's just an entire wondrous atmosphere of merriment. Then the rest of the year happens. Dad dies from a stroke, Mom marries a bishop who is so much less fun, and by less fun I mean textbook physically and emotionally abusive. Your family tries to get you out, then this other guy smuggles you in a trunk, then while you're living with this family you fantasize about your stepdad bursting into flames. Okay, most of this movie is not about Christmas, but the parts that are about Christmas are just some of the most lavishly produced scenes of Yuletide cheer ever committed to celluloid. Like, I'm not entirely sure of the exact definition of smorgasbord. My last name is Calgren, I should know this. But I'm assuming it's close to this. You can watch the first act of the television miniseries cut of Fanny Alexander as a standalone story about the Ekdahl family Christmas celebration. But as a part of a 312-minute story, the scenes of family merriment really emphasize the contrast with the sparse oppressiveness of the bishop's household. It really does take you on a much grander journey. You should watch Fanny and Alexander anyway because it's one of those all-time great films, I suppose. There's a garbage truck outside. The streets outside gave a review of Fanny and Alexander. How dare you. But in the holiday season, it's a good reminder that all the warm fuzzies of Christmas time are only a minor distraction from the inevitability of the uncertain future, beyond the fragile guarantee of a cozy December the 25th. So it's the Christmas season, and you're the King of England. You've put your awesome wife in jail, you're indulging in your side piece who is way too young for you, and you have to decide which of your 3 craptastic sons gets the fancy metal circle hat before you die at the ripe old age of 56. They've already rebelled against you with the aid of your jail wife, which is why she's in jail. So, classic Christmas movie plotline, all the families getting together and there's gonna be some drama.
Well, what shall we hang? The holly or each other?
Also getting together is your wife's ex-husband's son, who is also your son's ex? Which is awkward. I mean, it's awkward enough that your wife, who, again, you put in jail, is out and communicating with your fail sons 3, risking your life's work and basically forcing you to do some Crusader Kings 3 shenanigans.
I'm a priest! Somebody dig me up a priest!
Richard's getting married.
Now? He's getting married now?
I never cease to marvel at the quickness of your mind.
The Lion in Winter was nominated for 7 Oscars and won 3. For James Goldman's screenplay adapted from his own stage play, for Best Score for John Barry, whom you know for writing this, and Best Actress for Katharine Hepburn as Eleanor of Aquitaine, one of the 4 she would win, setting the record for most Academy Awards won by an actor. And she earns it. Everything she says is iconic.
I'd hang you from the nipples, but you'd shock the children.
I even made poor Louis take me on
crusade.
How's that for blasphemy?
How's that for blasphemy?
I dressed my maids as Amazons and rode
I dressed my
bare-breasted
maids as
halfway to
Amazons
Damascus.
and rode bare-breasted
Louis had a
halfway
seizure,
to
and I damn near
Damascus.
died of windburn.
Louis had a seizure, and I damn near died of windburn. But the troops were dazzled.
And of course, the immortal, he's got a knife.
Of course he has a knife. He always has a knife. We all have knives. It's 1183 and we're barbarians. How clear we make it.
Yes, my little piglets, we are the origins of war. Just such a quotable movie, and such a great showcase for multiple generations of capital T thespians. Hepburn and Peter O'Toole, of course, and in their movie debuts, young Anthony Hopkins and Timothy Dalton. Of course, there's always the real reason people watch historical costume dramas, from Downton Abbey to The Dragon Show, and that's to see incredibly talented actors wearing gorgeous costumes being petty little
John, you're so clean and neat. Henry takes good care of you. And Richard, don't look sullen, dear. It makes your eyes go small and piggy, and your chin look weak. Geoffrey. Is Philip here yet?
That's the stuff. But also, it is such a perfect Christmas film. Because for so many, Christmas is about seeing family. And it may be a good reminder that as messed up as your family might be, it will never be worse than the royal family.
Well, what family doesn't have its ups and downs?
So, it's the Christmas season, and you're a soldier in an Imperial Japanese prison camp in occupied Java. And wouldn't you know it, you're the only guy there who speaks Japanese. The guy running the camp is ashamed because he didn't die the way his friends did when they attempted a coup d'etat, and he's taking it out on the POWs. Then this new prisoner drops in the camp, and the captain gets a metaphorical nosebleed. As the captain gets hornier, he gets crueler. He starves the entire camp to discipline them. The only reason you all survive is because the captain's new crush smuggles in some delicious, nutritious flowers to nosh on.
Who do you think you are? Are you an evil spirit?
Yeah. And one of yours, I hope.
I'm not going to spend too long on this because I did a full episode on Nagase Oshima's Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence back in 2016. Back when I thought 2016 was a bad year. But it really is a fine war movie. And a very, very gay one. The central relationships are homoerotic tension between 2 beautiful rock stars, and a guard and prisoner arguing about just how homoerotic the aforementioned rock stars are being.
侍はオカマだと怖くはない。
戦争は男の友情を強める全ての兵士がオカマになるわけじゃない。
お前らは兵士じゃない。ただの捕虜だ。
I remember getting comments on that video saying that I missed the point of the movie. I get a lot of comments saying I missed the point of many movies, as if movies had only one singular point to get. That they actually just really mutually respected each other as fellow soldiers across enemy lines. It's about esprit de corps. It's not a gay thing. Gay got nothing to do with it. Stop putting gay in my totally hetero fantasy about looking into another man's eyes and seeing the hardship of my life reflected in his own. It's a very not gay feeling to know that I could never bring him harm without harming myself, and that his touch makes me weak at the knees. No, but for real, it really is a shame that most men will only accept mask-on-mask affection in the context of war. As if only by going to war they can fill the gap in their soul left by patriarchal socialization. And you really don't need a war for that. You don't need to see action to be buddies. Speaking of buddies and action... So, it's the Christmas season, and you are too old for this shit. Or too dumb for this shit. Or too drunk for this shit. Or too amnesiac for this shit. Or too traumatized from defeating Loki's Chitauri army for this shit. Because of some pressing reason, this shit is not for you. So Shane Black is an actor turned screenwriter turned writer-director who, for whatever reason, loves setting movies in and around the Christmas season. Probably for the sake of irony, since his films often use brutal violence that disrupt the normal patterns of life. Even the normal patterns of movies. Here's a boilerplate movie scene. Man or woman have an argument.
Get out of my life! I'm at the airport, right? And I run into Flicka, and she just says, "Doc."
Did I just cut off your finger?
Yeah.
And now the movie suddenly has a subplot where Robert Downey Jr. has to get his finger reattached. More movies need disruptions like that. Definitely more Christmas movies. Of this group, I think The Nice Guys and The Long Kiss Goodnight hold up the best. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang has some very dated gay jokes.
It's Christmas. Where's my present, Slick?
Your f***ing present is you're not in jail.
And Lethal Weapon has the whole Meldoff Gittler thing. I mean, even Iron Man 3 holds up pretty well. Yeah, I know comic book fans were mad about that one because they changed the Mandarin, but no, the Mandarin was a bad racist caricature, and the movie did the smartest and funniest thing possible by making him a joke about how he is a bad racist caricature. Trevor Slattery rules, fight me. If you're in an action comedy Christmas mood and you can only hear "Now I Have a Machine Gun, ho ho ho" so many times before it gets stale, Shane Black is your guy.
Hallelujah.
So it's the Christmas season, and you're working retail at some department store that's sucking your soul. You have some crappy, fair-weather friends all sucked up in whatever headlines they pretend to care about, but then some ridiculously gorgeous lady asks you some surprisingly intimate questions about the sort of gift you might like if you were a kid. And she says she likes your silly little holiday hat. Then you go on this totally little innocent dinner date, just us gals, with this goddess. And then you get closer.
At least there's some pretty country around where I live. Would you like to come visit me this Sunday?
And wouldn't you like to see my beautiful country? Cut that joke, Kyle. And then you have a whirlwind affair out of the city and you're inspired to expand your photography career because in her image you found a new fount of beauty in the world. And then you find out that all the sex you had was recorded by a private investigator to be used as evidence in her divorce proceedings under a moral clause, which would prevent her from ever seeing her daughter again. Okay, so Todd Haynes' Carol has already entered the canon of queer cinema and Christmas cinema.
Like, she's definitely gonna tell you how much she liked the movie Carol.
Great. I hope she does. It's my favorite Christmas movie.
But it really does deserve a mention here in an alt-Christmas list. The score alone is a classic. The cinematography, the costumes. It's just a beautiful period piece and a reminder. It's just a beautiful period piece and a reminder that so much of the basic assumptions of the Christmas season involve family, and historically and currently, my radiator's singing the song of its people. Queer people have been denied family. The plot of the movie is about lawyers using a woman's queerness to argue that her very existence is morally wrong and an unfit presence for her child. An argument made against queer people to this very day. Which is an excellent segue to another Christmas film released that same year.
Merry Christmas Eve, bitch.
So it's Christmas Eve and you've just finished a jail sentence for prostitution. Then your bestie drops the bomb that your boyfriend cheated on you. So you go on a rampage looking for the quote-unquote real fish that hubby cheated on you with. You find her in Hollywood's dingiest brothel. Turns out that boyfriend was her pimp. And it's not cheating if it's business, maybe, sorta. Meanwhile, Bestie services an Armenian client at a car wash. After a stressful day, you smoke crack in the bathroom with the real fish, and listen to your bestie sing a happy song from the 1930s to absolutely no one else in a bar. Then that Armenian guy shows up again to apologize for missing Bestie's performance, but Boyfriend Pimp is there too, and so is the Armenian guy's mother-in-law, his wife, and his infant daughter. The whole situation is, I hope I'm using this word right, ratchet? Sean Baker's Tangerine was released to quite a bit of fanfare in 2015, mostly because of its groundbreaking technique. It was shot on an iPhone, and it actually looks good. And because it was one of the few films made at the time about trans characters where they were actually played by two trans actors, Kitana Kiki Rodriguez and Maya Taylor. This movie practically set a new baseline. It's a very grungy story told in a very grungy setting with very grungy people. There's a lot of casual racism and very uncasual transphobia. Like, the central plot is a pimp cheating on his trans fiancée with a cis woman, who then goes on to call him a full F-slur.
You just went from half to full.
And the climax of the movie, well, there's this constant build of energy, resentment, betrayal, and just yelling and cattiness and deep personal hurt, and then a hate crime on top of everything else. And it's a really powerful watch, honestly. This film is about people living at the margins of society on the supposed happiest night of the year, and it does a great job of putting you in that space with them. It's a movie that, at its core, is about two best friends realizing that, though they hurt each other, all they really have is each other. Though it does drive home how important family is. Even, and maybe especially, found family. Speaking of finding family, so it's Christmas Eve, and you're an unhoused alcoholic in Tokyo. You're watching a nativity play with your two unhoused gal pals, and you go back out on the street, and suddenly, you discover a baby. Shenanigans ensue. Shenanigans ranging from getting caught in the crossfire of a Yakuza hit, to getting beaten up by some random kids after giving a man his last sip of booze, to running into your one gal pal's old boss at the nightclub where you used to sing, even some involved dramas about the baby's true parents. Everyone's trauma gets relived, everyone gets a tiny bit of redemption. Tokyo Godfathers is, no joke, a feel-good Christmas story. Like, it earns its happy ending. Satoshi Kon only made 4 feature films before his untimely death, and all of them could be considered masterpieces. Tokyo Godfathers included. The story was adapted from a 1948 John Ford Western starring John Wayne, itself based on a 1913 novella, where instead of a posse caring for a lone babe in the Wild West, they're forced to navigate an urban wasteland. Kon's other works are reality-bending mind screws, but here his virtuosic animation is best utilized in flashbacks, fleshing out the 3 odd wise men at the center of the story, who are all amazing. Also, can we talk about how one of the 3 Godfathers is an alcoholic named Jin? It is Satoshi Kon's most grounded, most realistic film, dancing skyscrapers aside, and its lead characters are so rounded and tragic that it works not only as a portrait of being unhoused, but as a layered Yuletide fable. It's people at their lowest under pressure to bring out their best. The reason for the season, after all, is the birth of a very special child. So it's Christmas Eve, and you're 9 months pregnant with the baby you're having with a man who died in a car wreck that you survived. The baby's overdue, but as healthy as a low-poly CGI model can be. And then a woman knocks on your door, and she says something along the lines of, pardon my French, "Je voudrais votre enfant." She has a pair of scissors. 2 dudes directed this movie. So, À l'intérieur, I do not speak French at all. So, À l'intérieur is a 2007 French movie directed by the duo Julien Malry and Alexandre Bustillo, who would later direct a prequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This movie about fetal abduction, which is apparently a thing real enough to have its own Wikipedia entry, is part of a loose movement that started around the turn of the millennium called the New French Extremity. which is exactly what it sounds like. Young Gauls doing a lot. And this movie does a lot. I mean, there's the premise alone. Later, one character fights another character with a spray can and a lighter. At one point, the main character accidentally stabs her own mom. And yes, it all takes place on Christmas Eve. Don't watch it with your family. Or do. I don't know what relationship you have with your family, found or otherwise. You can all be into big heaping helpings of gore in your movies, and that's okay. The point of this list is to show you that you have options. The new French Extremity is interesting. It kind of peaked around 2008 with Martyrs, but its echoes are still being felt, with Gaspar Noé's late career and Julia Ducournau carrying the gory torch, and Inside is a pretty solid entry point into this movement. Maybe it's best watched alone, if at all. But if you're in the mood for something disturbing, but in a less visceral, more existential way. So it's the Christmas season, and you're Stanley Kubrick, and you're thinking, hey, I'm Stanley Kubrick. I'm an unstable maniac with a camera. I'm gonna set a record for the longest continuous movie shoot ever and then die. I'm gonna take a famous Hollywood power couple moment before their very messy public divorce and make a movie about them very aggressively not cheating on each other. And I'm gonna set it at Christmas. Eyes Wide Shut was adapted from a 1926 novella by Austrian writer Arthur Schnitzler called Traumnovelle, Dream Story. Kubrick bought the rights to it in the 1960s, and in that famously obsessive Kubrickian way, the movie percolated for 30 years before starting a record-setting 400-day film shoot, being finished in 1999, with the final cut being turned in 6 days before he died.
Very sure of yourself, aren't you?
No. I'm sure of you.
How many days of shooting did it take to get these two to act this believably high? The film updates the setting from Vienna to New York and Carnival to Christmas, which means that the infamous sequence with the Venetian carnival masks is actually an adaptational leftover and an unseasonal one. But then again, that also effectively makes it feel even more disconnected from the rest of the world. Christmas decorations diffuse the entire movie. Every scene is seasonal except for the really famous one, making that whole sequence even more of a haunting disruption of normal life, signaling to the viewer that you should not be seeing this. Yes, Kyle, that is the truly upsetting part of the orgy sequence in Eyes Wide Shut, the lack of Christmas lights. You brilliant YouTube critic, you. Kubrick is trying to disturb the viewer by not adding an elf on the shelf in this scene. I am very smart. This is why other critics don't like you. That and your abrasive personality. Moving on! So it's the Christmas season, and you are a very happily married realtor in the suburbs of DC. And like most white people who don't think that hard about the history of colonialism, you're super excited to be moving to Hawaii. Then you come home and find your husband murdered. And as you mourn, you discover that he was having an affair with a stripper named Autumn, and for like a really fetishy reason too, leading you to question what your relationship was based on really. And then you meet Autumn, learn her real name is Fantasia, and then you go on a spree of partying, lines of cocaine, shoplifting, just seeking thrill after thrill to feel something again. You go to your weird, kinky neighbor's awkward orgy, which has a recently divorced bald guy and one of the founding directors of Mumblecore there, and then it just kind of peters out and devolves into a rock band, and... Okay, I'm sorry, kink shaming is bad, and I genuinely want this to be a sex-positive space for everyone, but how the hell are you going to host an orgy in a house that has a framed photo of a kitten in front of an American flag? That is some disturbing Kubrickian crap right there. So this 2013 film, directed by Zach Clark, is this very mumblecore tragedy about grief. And I mean very mumblecore. Joe Swanberg is right there. Anna Margaret Hollyman gives a fantastic lead performance, and it is a very sad portrait of someone whose life has been destroyed doing everything humanly possible to feel joy again, during a time when one is expected, compelled, to feel only joy. And not everyone has a Merry Christmas. And I want to hold space in this list for those who have trouble doing that this year. Or indeed, any year.
I just want it to feel like Christmas. Why doesn't it feel like Christmas?
Christmas is whatever you want it to be.
I think I should be worried that my Christmas movie list contains multiple orgies. So it's the Christmas season and you're hosting an orgy. Okay, this one is really a stretch. But I like stretching. I like finding the boundaries of what a definition is and pushing it. Definitions are fluid, language does what we say it does. Die Hard is way more of a Christmas movie than this movie that actually has Christmas in the title. The title, by the way, is taken from the poetry of Rimbaud. When will we go over mountains and shores to hail the birth of new labor, new wisdom, the flight of tyrants and demons, the end of superstition, to be the first to adore Christmas on Earth? I don't mind doing this. Director Barbara Rubin made this while working for Jonas Mekas and the New York-based Filmmakers Cooperative, which worked with the likes of such avant-garde icons as Shirley Clark, Stan Brakhage, Jack Smith, Ken Jacobs, and even some involvement from one Andy Warhol. Barbara Rubin was a massive networker, and the connections she helped make allowed New York to become a major center for pop art and experimental film. And this is her major experiment. 2 reels of film projected on top of one another, juxtaposing some sexually explicit shots with other sexually explicit shots. Mask bodies, femme bodies, together in infinite variety and infinite combinations, which I can only show on YouTube by mosaicing the crap out of it. It was intended to be played with an ad hoc soundtrack of some classic boomer sex jams, which this rip I got honors.
Everybody's heard about the bird.
It is undeniably radical and boundary-breaking for a film made in 1963. And if you're worrying about how to watch this incredibly underground art film, no worries. You can watch this film in full on ubuweb.com. Founded in 1996, the oldest website online dedicated to the preservation and curation of avant-garde art. Bask in that mid-90s UI design. And it's so easy to navigate! Look at all the names! I should really start exploring the 60s experimental scene more on this channel. Preferably with something I can actually show on the site without being perma-banned. Okay, let's get back to something more classically Christmas-related. So it's the Christmas season, and you're in Finland, and some foreign drilling corporation is fracking a nearby mountain because of some rare material contained within it. Said mountain is I should have practiced saying this word. Said mountain is Korvatunturi, which I know I'm mispronouncing somehow, which in Finnish folklore is the location of the secret workshop of one Santa Claus. And now these foreigners are trying to set him free. And that is terrible. Rare Exports, A Christmas Tale, is a 2010 action horror comedy directed by the Finnish Jalmari Helander, which he adapted from his own 2003 short film, Rare Exports Incorporated. To be perfectly honest, I think the short is better, certainly funnier, because it cuts right to the core of the central joke. The rare exports of the title are free-range wild Santas, captured and tamed and trained as mall Santas and exported around the world. Which is a great-ass joke.
If you really want to make Father Christmas furious, try cursing and heavy drinking.
Perkele!
The result will be inevitable. Death.
The film builds on the lore by explaining that these feral, old, naked white men... by the way, can certain horror movies stop acting like the scariest thing on Earth is naked old people? I mean, we're all gonna look like that eventually. Chill out. I mean, that's the idea, to look like that. Like, the idea of living is to live long enough to look like that, right? This is the win state. Anyway, the film builds on the lore by saying that the feral old men are not Santas. They are, in fact, Santa's little helpers. The actual Santa is a demon encased in ice that the good guys need to destroy in the third act finale. It is a very, very, very silly, just a very silly horror movie with a silly premise that happens to be about Christmas. here's another horror movie about Christmas. So it's the Christmas season, and you're in a sorority house, and you get a call from some pervert who moans a lot.
Hey, quiet! It's him again! The moaner!
Your sorority sister picks up the phone and tells him off for you.
Oh, why don't you go find a wall socket and stick your tongue in it?
I'll stick my tongue up your pretty.
You fucking creep!
I'm going to kill you.
Meanwhile, your friend Claire goes missing. She goes missing for a really long time. And on top of that, you have to tell your boyfriend that you're pregnant and you want to abort, which he isn't taking well.
You can't make a decision like that. You hadn't even asked me.
I wasn't even going to tell you.
I want us to have a baby.
Peter, I can't.
Oh, Christ.
And the caller just keeps calling, and he seems to be getting mad about two kids named Agnes and Billy or something.
Where did you put Agnes, Billy? Look, I'm telling you, you have the wrong number.
And for some reason, all your friends keep disappearing. And because no slasher movies have been released yet, you have no idea what could possibly be going on. Black Christmas is not only an underseen canonical Christmas classic, it is also a bona fide horror classic. Directed by, of all people, Bob Clark, director of A Christmas Story. Oh, fudge. And just like how A Christmas Story codified the tropes of a classic Christmas film, so Black Christmas codified the tropes of so many slasher movies. Before Halloween, before Friday the 13th, before countless other films turned sororities into slaughterhouses, even before this one particular plot twist became cliché.
The caller is in the house. The calls are coming from the house.
Black Christmas was doing it all. And unlike so many later entries into the genre, it seems to like and have empathy for the killer's victims. They're not just immoral knife fodder, they're characters. And this film seems to deeply understand the misogynist roots of the killer's violence. A key plot point is a character planning to get an abortion, and a disembodied voice not taking that well.
Just don't hurt the baby.
Stop this, Peter.
You want a baby. I know you do. I don't want to hurt the baby.
It's the story of a formless, disembodied voice enacting violence against women comfortable in their own sexuality. Yes, before Michael Myers, before Jason Voorhees, though the same year as Leatherface, and released the year after the Supreme Court's Roe v. Wade decision. Horror has always been political, and always been seasonal. And going on this horror streak, our next movie is called simply The Dead! So it's the Christmas season, and you've been asked to give a speech at your aunt's yearly dinner. It's not Christmas, but January 6th. That is, 12th night. We should be getting 12 days of Christmas, like the song says. We should be having a whole Yule tide till early January. Why is no one complaining about the war on that? So you spend most of the night worrying about your silly little speech, and everyone tries to get the professional singer there to sing. You get into an argument with your nationalist cousin who calls you a West Briton because you want to have a vacation in France and not Galway. West Britain. The drunk cousin defends the opera's decision to have a black leading man, and everyone is awkward about it. Someone recites a sad poem, then as you're waiting for a cab home, you see your wife in a reverie as she listens to the singer perform The Lass of Algrim, which reminds her of a man in her youth who loved her so passionately that he braved a cold which would cause his death. Then you realize that, in the larger story of your wife's existence, you have played a far smaller part than you thought. Indeed, all of the people you saw tonight seem ever diminishing, and one by one they are all becoming shades, better pass boldly into that other world in the full glory of some passion, then fade and wither dismally with age. Your soul having approached that region where dwell the vast hosts of the dead, you are conscious of, but cannot comprehend their wayward and flickering existence. Your own identity fading out into a gray, impalpable world, the solid world itself, which these dead at one time reared and lived in, was dissolving and dwindling. Joyce! This is a beautiful, melancholy, and faithful adaptation of the short story by the same name, forms the last entry in James Joyce's The Dubliners. Directed by John Huston in his last film, and starring his daughter, Angelica. He directed from a wheelchair, through oxygen tubes, and created such a warm, funny environment that captured all of the fine nuance of Joyce's characters, and it leaves you with a wistful sadness. A feeling that all such activities, the feasting, the singing, the dancing, the silly arguments, the pointless speeches, are but the privileges of shades, acting out the pleasantries that remain after the fire and passion of youth has burned away. And perhaps we may never love again as we did in our younger days, instead float through our remaining existence as the dead do. The living dead. So it's the Christmas season, and it's your last year of high school. You're anxious about what the future holds for you, and even the Christmas spirit can't wrench you from the notion that whatever plans you have for yourself, the world won't let your plans last beyond the moment. Because
there's no such thing as a Hollywood ending.
Because you have plans to travel the world while you still can, disappointing your dad who wants you to immediately start university after graduating, your American friend can't get the reporting past the tyrannical principal, or get their parents to give a crap about them, your one-night stand is being annoying, it's all the stresses of being young and in the so-called prime of your life. That's a terrible phrase, isn't it? Prime of your life? Because this can't be it. Life doesn't end in high school. Life moves on. It moves on in spite of all reason. Shambling, moaning, hungry. And all the warm fuzzies of Christmas time are only a minor distraction from the inevitability of the uncertain future beyond the fragile guarantee of a cozy December the 25th. Anna and the Apocalypse is a Scottish musical about the zombie apocalypse, and yes, I did use the same sentence to describe the Ingmar Bergman drama as the musical zombie movie, because this is what watching too many movies does to your brain. My brain done broke. I cannot function as a person. I cannot find grass to touch. Directed by John McPhail, who took over direction after the untimely death of creator Ryan McHenry, director of the short it was based on, simply entitled Zombie Musical. Simple, high concept, couple of genuinely great songs, and a few decent jokes about Gen Z versus zombies.
What?
Justin Bieber's a zombie.
Favorite zombies have to be the snowman costume zombie and the two Christmas show penguin zombies. Yes, it's a silly mashup of far too many genre conventions, including the Christmas film, but whatever, it's fun. And it's a fun interjection into the normal patterns of Christmas cinema. And in some ways, it's pretty emotionally resonant. Sometimes all one can do in this crushing atmosphere of December mandatory joy is just be grateful that you made it to the end of the year, alive. You know what? Don't let the hegemonic culture tell you that you have to feel any one way about this time of year. Human emotion is complex and layered and does not stop for a monoculture telling you to celebrate the birth of somebody's Lord and Savior. And hopefully something on this list can help you process emotions that you otherwise aren't permitting yourself to feel. Break the canon. Make your own canon. So, what did I miss? What are some of the most radical movies that could only barely count as a Christmas movie that I didn't talk about? Maybe I'll put it on next year's list, if I make one of these next year. This video is made possible by my very kind and very patient patrons on Patreon. Anyway, happy holidays, and I'll be back next year with a video about being mad as hell. Ick Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Chrysler.